You better believe I'm going to compare every detail of the iPhone 13 Pro and the iPhone 13. This is the ultimate iPhone 13 comparison. Welcome everybody to Apple Insider. It is Andrew here, and you can find me on Twitter at Andrew_OSU. In this video, I have these two guys to check out. This is the new iPhone 13, and this is the iPhone 13 Pro. These devices are pretty much the same exact size, but this year, more than ever, there are huge differences between Apple's 13 and Pro level model. So in this video, I'm going to walk through all of those changes for you, starting off with the physical design of these two phones. Obviously, these things look very similar. From the outside, you really can't tell them that much apart. The iPhone 13 and the iPhone 13 Pro both are sporting 6.1-inch OLED displays, but there's a lot of differences here that we should look at. Starting out, the iPhone 13 Pro is still using a stainless steel chassis, so you can see these glossy sides, that's all stainless steel, whereas the iPhone 13 is using an anodized aluminum body. So it has more of a matte finish to it. Technically, the stainless steel is the higher end one, that polished chrome look, versus the matte anodized aluminum. It also has a difference in weight. That stainless steel is making this phone weigh in at 204 grams, while the iPhone 13 only weighs 174. All the buttons are pretty much in the same place. If we look at the volume rockers, the toggle switch there, we can see there is a difference where the SIM card is placed, but otherwise these guys are very similar. Similarly, the power button is in the same location. All the ports on the bottom are also the same, but what's different is going to be that camera bump. You can see how big of a difference there is between the two. Because of that, iPhone 13 cases will not fit the iPhone 13 Pro. That's very important. Last year, the iPhone 12 and 12 Pro could share a case. They were the exact same dimensions. But this year, because of these differences in camera bumps, the iPhone 13 cases, that camera bump is going to be too small to fit on the iPhone 13 Pro. So do not pick up an iPhone 13 case and try to use it with a 13 Pro. 13 Pro case will fit on an iPhone 13, but you're going to have a lot of gap around that camera module just because it's going to be so much larger if it was designed for the 13 Pro. If we look at colors, the iPhone 13 Pro and its stainless steel body comes in this new Sierra blue, but we also have graphite, gold, and silver options available. If we look at the iPhone 13, this is the product red version. Product red is a little bit darker, I believe, than like the last generation product red, but we have product red. We also have starlight, midnight, blue, and pink to go along with this product red. Now it's time to compare displays. Both of these guys, as I said, are sporting 6.1-inch OLED displays. The iPhone 13 technically has a Super Retina XDR display, whereas the iPhone 13 Pro is using a Super Retina XDR display with ProMotion. That's going to be probably the biggest difference between these two displays. ProMotion allows the refresh rate to ramp up to 120 Hz when doing things like swiping through home screens, scrolling through Safari, and in third-party apps and games that are updated to take advantage of the new higher refresh rate. Otherwise, these have the same pixel density, the same resolutions, the same size notch, and the same contrast ratio. One last difference between these two guys is that the iPhone 13 Pro has a slightly brighter display. Its average brightness in outside settings can get up to about 1,000 nits, whereas the iPhone 13 is only at 800 nits. So if you're in direct sunlight a lot, the iPhone 13 Pro may be better because it gets just a bit brighter in those brighter settings. Now it's time to check out what's inside each of these two phones. Both of these phones has Apple's latest A15 Bionic processor, but the iPhone 13 only has a 4-core GPU, whereas the iPhone 13 Pro has a 5-core GPU, giving it slightly better graphics performance. But just saying it has an extra core doesn't mean a whole lot, so let's go ahead and look at the numbers. In Geekbench 5's compute graphics score, the iPhone 13 Pro is winning out with a 14,275 compared to only 10,704 on the iPhone 13. That is that extra GPU coming into play. If we look at our standard benchmarks for the CPU, the iPhone 13 Pro got a 1732 single core score and a 4255 in the multi-core score. Our iPhone 13 earned a 1727 and a 4690. So actually our iPhone 13 did better on that multi-core score, but there's just variances in these tests. If we repeated this several times, I'm certain that the iPhone 13 Pro would be winning out. But they have essentially the same CPU, multiple efficiency cores, 4 efficiency cores, and 2 high performance cores. They're the same CPU. The only difference is going to be with that GPU. Our last benchmark that we wanted to look at is the Geekbench ML test, machine learning test, and the iPhone 13 Pro went out here pretty well with a 936 on that TensorFlow Lite CPU score and 802 on our iPhone 13. So again, just better performance, just slightly better performance on our iPhone 13 Pro than the iPhone 13. Other internal changes that you can expect is the iPhone 13 Pro has a 1 terabyte option available for it, whereas the iPhone 13 only goes up to 512 gigs. So they each have a 128, 256, and 512 option, but the iPhone 13 Pro has the additional 1 terabyte configuration. The iPhone 13 Pro also has slightly better battery life. Mostly they're going to be pretty similar, but you can get a little bit extra juice out of the 13 Pro than you can out of the 13. If you really want better battery life, you're going to have to upgrade to that iPhone 13 Pro Max. Okay, let's round this thing out, guys, with a camera comparison. That's right, let's compare the shooters on the back of these two guys. Now, the immediate difference that you're going to see, if you can, count to 3, is that the iPhone 13 Pro has an additional lens than the iPhone 13. The iPhone 13 Pro, once again like the iPhone 12 Pro, has a telelens, whereas the iPhone 13 does not. So they both have a wide-angle lens, an ultra-wide-angle lens, but the iPhone 13 Pro has a 3x telelens, which allows digital zoom up to 15 times. So 15 times digital zoom, 3 times optical zoom. This has just 1 times optical zoom and up to 5 times digital zoom. Looking at the wide-angle lenses, the iPhone 13 Pro wide-angle lens is better with an f1.5 aperture versus an f1.6 aperture. It allows in a little bit more light. It's going to get you a little bit more natural background bokeh. It's going to be slightly quicker when it comes to focusing, in addition to having the LiDAR scanner, which can also aid in focusing. So there's a LiDAR scanner on the 13 Pro, but not on the 13. Between the LiDAR scanner and the wider aperture on the wide-angle lens, you're going to get better photos with the iPhone 13 Pro. The ultra-wide, there's a big difference. If you like shooting on the ultra-wide lens, you really should look at the Pro. The iPhone 13 Pro has an f1.8 aperture on the ultra-wide lens, whereas the iPhone 13 only has an f2.4 aperture. That is a big difference in how much light is being let into that sensor. What that means for your photos is you're going to get much less grain and noise when shooting in middle to lower light situations on that ultra-wide-angle lens. And because more light's coming in, it's also able to focus faster, which means you're going to get less blurry shots as well. The iPhone 13 Pro is also capable of shooting night mode portraits, and it can shoot Pro RAW photos. Otherwise, these cameras are very similar. They both have portrait mode, deep fusion, night mode, smart HDR4, and photographic styles, which are a new feature to both the iPhone 13 and 13 Pro. For video, the iPhone 13 Pro offers 3x optical zoom and up to 9x digital zoom. That is not found on the iPhone 13 because, again, it doesn't have that telelens. We also get support for Apple ProRes video when that feature is available on the iPhone 13 Pro, and we have cinematic mode on both of these guys. So Apple's big new feature, cinematic mode, it's available both on the iPhone 13 Pro and the iPhone 13. How about some selfie camera talk? The front-facing cameras on both of these phones is essentially the same. They're both 12 megapixel front-facing cameras. They of course both support Face ID, and they sport an f2.2 aperture. Each of these supports photographic styles and Smart HDR 4.0. The biggest difference is that the iPhone 13 Pro, once again, is supported for shooting ProRes video and the iPhone 13 is not. So that is it. Those are all of the differences between the iPhone 13 Pro and the iPhone 13. The colors, the materials, the cameras, the performance, the displays, everything that you need to know to make an informed decision on whether it makes sense for you to go with the iPhone 13 or the iPhone 13 Pro. Let me know which one you guys are choosing over on Twitter at Andrew_OSU. And stay tuned. I have so much more iPhone 13 videos coming your way.